at UCLA, they have what they call a safe spaces. What they call safe spaces for is black students. Is that true?
Yeah.
And so black students are now known as snowflakes?
Snowflakes?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Snowflakes, if I'm right about this, they're weak people who need their own safe space.
Oh, okay,
They're triggered very easily.
It just means that it's a protected space.
From what though?
Meaning that you have to respect one another. It's like developing a culture of respecting the person. So even if it's a space between, because we have many shared spaces between people of color and white people, and a lot of that means that if there's an issue pertaining to a certain community, respect that issue, respect the community members to be able to speak freely on that, don't overstep them on it. When we're talking to each other, it's just coming out of us love.
Being a black woman on this campus, I have always battled with the disproportionate reality of being one black and one being a Bruin. And it only revealed that on the night of October 6th of the undercover but blatant realities of how we are seen as people of color on this campus. And that, my friends, is a shame.
And this totally makes sense to you, right? It all seems real.
Definitely does.
Does racism exist?
Yes.
What's the proof of racism?
The proof of racism, the fact that there aren't black men in the home. The proof of racism is that we're only 20% of this population, but represent 75 to 80% in the prison industrial complex.
Are you saying it's the fault of the white man that the black man is not in the home?
I'm not saying the white man, but it's the fault of the institution.
But the institution is white, right?
The institution majority white, so I guess you could say that.
And so it's their fault that the black man is not in his home.
Yes.
Why is the black man so weak that he will allow another man to make him leave his home?
Coming in, I think I hear what you're saying, and the fact that it can be attributed to another person, the reason why they're there. But coming in already, you could say, why are black people so weak that they allow themselves to be stripped from their own home, being stripped from Africa? There has been a culture of black people being resistant and fighting back, and since we've been on the shores of America, we've been cut down and killed and murdered and encouraged to not resist. And in the institution, black people at least have always been looking to find wherever they can succeed, wherever they can move up. And it's very difficult with the system of criminalization.
This is so crazy, but you're totally convinced. And you're such
I've been educated.
You're like a nice girl that I would trust, not knowing that this is inside of you.
I think if you get to meet some of my friends, you'll see that I think a lot of us are very in tune and very tapped into reality. We're not crazy. We're level-headed people.
No, this is crazy.
Graduating with amazing degrees from UCLA and going to do it more.
Racism does not exist, by the way. It's an illusion. It's another lie that's been made up by the children of the deceiver.
So how is it an illusion if black people have been, you know, oppressed and pushed down into their situations, and the fact that
black folks
black
were
people are
doing
taken
better
here?
before the civil rights movement than they are today, because they relied on themselves. They relied on the family. They did not follow black leaders. They were not brainwashed as they are today, and so they
Not
did
necessarily.
better.
I think it's an aspect of numbers.
No.
Like, because once people were being integrated into communities between black and white, that's when the institution itself was able to make the system of how they did things a little bit more ambiguous. But that shows the weakness
of black people, though. Those black people are weak, and they're still weak. One last thing, define white supremacy for me. Define that.
Yeah, white supremacy is this strong push for all whiteness, I guess, all white issues, and a push for
who's pushing for that?
A push on all aspects, and it's kind of an aspect of racism, because racism isn't just a thing, it's an institution of oppressing a group of people on the basis of their cultural backgrounds, and white supremacy is like directly stemming from that. You're a white supremacist if you're acting in that way when you're aiding in the institution, like continuing in the system of racism.
I think that white people have made a horrible mistake by not pushing for their whiteness over the last 50 to 60 years.
You said white people have made the mistake of not pushing for their whiteness?
Right, for their own space, and not giving in to the demand of the radical blacks, because look what has happened. I think that started to change because you have the alt-right and others who are now starting to stand up and fight back. So I think, but what you don't realize is that black people are turning every other culture away from them. most cultures hate black people because they see them as angry and violent and demanding and criminals and out of wedlock birth and just want to impose upon other people rather than being independent and doing and loving folks and doing the right thing. So your efforts are hurting you as opposed to helping. Did you know that most cultures don't like black people anymore? They don't want to be around you.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, and absolutely true. But even if you had a legitimate cause, if you had one, the attitude and the way you're doing it is hurting and not helping.